Before I begin, I just want to make one clarification that this my internet is connected with mobile hotspot. So if I get any call, there may be a 10 or 15-second problem. So please bear with me. Uh, okay, thanks once again for everyone for this opportunity and also for participating in this lecture series. So today is my topic of presentation or lecture is the rights of refugees, India and international perspective. Uh, okay. So what I'll do for next 30 to 40 minutes is that I'll discuss majorly the
Iya, iya. Iya, kelas hukum. Itu kelas.
uh, so what I'm going to deliver for next 40 minutes is that the rights of refugees and the international level as well as at the Indian level. What are the legal instruments we have at the international level, and also what are the institutional mechanisms we have to provide protection for the refugees, and also we will also see what are the laws we have in India to provide protection to the refugees, and also what are the institutional mechanisms we have in India for guaranteeing the rights of refugees. As you know, the refugee is not only a human right issue, but also a political issue for many countries. Refugees plays a very important role in international politics. So just give you an example, when President Trump, he assumed the office of President of the United States, the first document he signed was the refugee deportation from the United States. That shows how the refugees plays an important role in politics of any country. Okay. So, if we see the refugees today, there are majority of the refugees are coming from the global south. The global south, I mean, these are refugees coming from the developing countries. Why we have so many refugees in the developing countries? Because the developing countries of the global south, Asian and African countries, are the subject of the exploitation or colonization of the Western countries, Western Europe and North American countries. So because of this reason, we have a large number of refugees are coming from the Asia and Africa. So that is one of the reasons why we have so many refugees. And also, the majority of these refugees are settling in the global south. That means developing countries. They are not in a position to go to the north. We'll discuss in a later why these refugees are not able to go to the north, why they are staying in the developing countries. So if they are, since they are staying in developing country, we know our developing countries do not have a financial resources, do not have any financial ability to take care of these refugees. So that's why the refugees' life is very vulnerable in the today's context. So apart from that, since this pandemic and this COVID situation has arisen, the refugees' vulnerability even more, because the many countries are today going for the lockdown and many other harsh measures. So because of this, what is happening today is that these refugees do not have a proper documents, and because of this, they are not able to get any benefit of social security measures, and also they are not able to get any protection from the country where they are staying. Okay, so apart from that, since these refugees are staying in camps, they are staying in a refugee camp, so it is very difficult for them, you are very difficult for them to maintain social distancing, and they don't have proper medical facilities, health system. So because of these reasons, refugees even in the pandemic time are the most affected. If you compare with the, for example, in India, we have seen how the migrant laborers are moving from one place to another place, or they going to home by walking, thousands of kilometers. But even if you compare with the migrant laborers, the refugees are even more affected, badly affected, because they don't have their home, where to settle. They had to stay at the mercy of the country where they are staying. So this shows that the refugee comparison with any other vulnerable groups are the most affected group in world today. Okay, so this leads to the second question. So what are the mechanism we have at the international level to provide protection to these people? Okay, so at the international level, uh, at the international level, there are so many legal instruments are enacted to provide protection. So before going to that, we have to understand the refugee comes under the umbrella of forced migration. Forced migration means the people move out of their home without their will, without involuntarily. That means they don't have any other option. They had to leave their home, otherwise there will be a threat to their life. Okay, so this is the main basic reason of forced migration. They are forcefully migrate to other place. So within this forced migration, we have so many categories. So we have economic migrants, we have refugees, we have internally displaced persons, we have stateless people. These all categories comes under the forced migrants. Okay, refugees also one of them. So briefly, I just describe what these categories are. The economic migrants, people leave their home, go other countries for the better economic opportunity. The refugee will discuss what is the definition of refugee. Refugees goes, you leave their home country and settled another country because of there is a threat to their life. The third category, internally displaced people. These people are, unlike the refugee, they settled within the border of their own countries. The reason for their displacement is maybe conflict, maybe disasters, maybe other kinds of human rights violations. Okay, so because of these reasons, these people, like refugees, they will leave their home, but they settle within the border of their own country. The last category is stateless people. Stateless people, they don't belong to any country. They remain statelessness. No country recognize them as their citizen. These are the brief, the so these are the brief, the aspect of brief definition of different categories under the post migrants. So now we'll discuss the what are the international laws we have to protect the refugees. Is I'm audible?
So you're
Is I'm
very much
audible?
audible. Yes, sir, you're
Okay,
audible.
okay, okay. So what are the laws we have at the international level? So at the international level, we have three major law to deal with the rights of refugees. In 1951, we have the international community adopted the Convention on the Status of Refugees. Okay. So apart from that, we have 1967 protocol, the protocol on refugees. This protocol was adopted in order to modify the definition of refugees in the 1951 convention. So apart from that, we have the Organization of African Unity Convention on the refugees in the Africa. So apart from that, we have another regional convention. The 1951 convention is the international convention. The African convention is the regional convention. This convention only applicable to the African region. And we have the Latin American convention in the Latin American region called Cartagena Convention. Okay, so these are the major international legal instrument we have at the mm, at the uh, at the international as well as the regional level to protect the rights of refugees. Okay, so now we'll discuss the important provisions of the 1951 convention. So the 1951 convention is the landmark legislation. It affects all the countries. Okay, it contains very important provision with respect to the rights of refugees. This Cartagena Convention and African Convention both are derived from the 1951 convention. So there are two important aspects I'm going to discuss about 1951 convention. The first one is definition, which is very, very important. Who are this, 1951 convention defines who are refugees. And also the definition is also contained in OAU convention, Organization of African Unity convention, and also Cartagena convention. So these three definitions are not similar. There are slight differences there between all these three definitions. Okay. So first we'll see what is the definition of refugees according to the 1951 convention. According to the 1951 convention, Article 1 talks about the definition of refugee. The refugee, according to this 1951 convention, refugee is someone who has a well-founded fear of persecution because of his or her race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group or political opinion. Okay, and this is one aspect. The other aspect is, he is outside her country of origin, and the third is unable to unwilling to go back to their home country. Okay, the first aspect is, if a person qualified to be refugees, he should have well founded fear of persecution because of race. If he belong to any particular race, if he belong to any particular religion, if he or she belong to any nationality, if he or she belong to a membership in a belong get the membership in a particular social group, or holding any political opinion. So because of these reasons, if any country or any association in the country target the people because of this reason, then the person will qualify as a refugee, because he should have well-founded fear of persecution. That's why he will leave their home. What will happen if he stay in his home? There will be a threat to his life. Okay. And the second is outside his country of origin. That means he has to, settled in another country. He should not remain in his country. He has to seek the refugee status in another country. What will happen if he stay in his own country? He will be considered as internally displaced person. Since he crossed the border, settled in another country, then he will be qualified to be a refugee. The third is, he is unwilling and unable to go back to his place. If he go back to his place, or if he go back to his home, then there will be a threat to his life. Okay. So these are the three important the part of the definition of refugee as contained in 1951 convention. Okay. So there are two more things which is very, very important with relate to this definition is, this 1951 convention was adopted when there was a large number of refugees in the Europe. Okay, so this convention was basically adopted to address the problem of refugees who are refugees because of the World War II. In order to address their problem, this 1951 convention was adopted in the Europe. Okay, so there are two more the condition they laid on. One is, sorry, yeah. So there are two more conditions. Is 1951 convention says these refugees should be origin before 1st January 1951. There is a time limit before 1st January 1951. There is one more condition is, this convention or this definition only applicable to the refugees who are there in the Europe. This definition will not applicable. This convention is not applicable to the outside Europe. These two restrictions was imposed in the definition of refugee as contained in 1951. Okay. So what happened after 50s, 60s? The refugees are started coming from the developing countries like Asian, African countries. So in order to address their problem, the many scholars criticize the definition of refugee as contained in 1951 because it has a time limit as well as geographical limitation. So in order to address this problem, in 1967, the United Nations adopted a protocol to 1951 convention. This protocol removed the time limitation as well as the geographical limitation of the refugee convention as well as the definition of refugee. Now the 1951 convention definition is applicable to refugees across the world. Okay, this is not only applicable to Europe, it is also applicable to every countries in the world if they are party to the 1951 convention. Okay. So apart from this, we have a regional law. So the first one is the African Convention. In 1969, the Organization of African Unity, is the regional organization of Africa, has adopted a convention governing the special aspect of refugee problem in Africa. Okay, so this convention was adopted mainly because, so after this 1951 convention, the large number of refugees are coming from the African region because of the colonization, because of the dominance of the European and North American countries. So in order to address this problem, the African Organization of African Unity has adopted this convention. Okay, so we'll see what is the definition of refugee as per the Organization of African Unity. Okay, so as per this convention, the definition of refugees, apart from the provision contained in 1951, this definition added some more elements. So this convention talks about this definition says that any person compelled to leave his or her country because of external aggression, foreign domination, or event seriously disturbing the public order. Okay, so what is the speciality of this African Convention? How this convention is different from the 1951 convention is because in this African Convention definition, they have added the external aggression, foreign domination, and seriously disturbing public order. So why they have added is because in 60s there was large number of refugees are coming from the foreign domination of the African countries. Okay, so this was not an important for the European countries, but this was an important for the African countries. Okay, in order to address this problem, they added this additional element to the refugee convention. Now, if any person is staying in another country because of they can't stay in the home because of the foreign domination or because of the external aggression, or external aggression means if any other country intervening in their country. So because of this reason, if they go to the another country to seek refuge, then they are entitled to get the refugee status as per the African Convention. Okay. So apart from that, we have another definition adopted by the Cartagena Convention. In 1984, the Latin American countries adopted this declaration. This is a declaration adopted by the Latin American countries in 1984. The importance, how this definition is different from the African and the 1951 convention is, in this declaration, the definition of refugees. So apart from this, the definition of refugee in the Cartagena Convention also include the provisions of 1951 definition of refugee. Apart from that, it says that a person who have fled their country because of their life or safety or freedom have been threatened by general violence, or foreign aggression, internal conflict, massive violation of human rights. So because of this reason, if any person from the Latin American country go to another country, so he is entitled to get the refugee status. So these three definition of refugees are very, very important. 1951 talks about international definition. African talks about the qualification of to get the refugee status in the Africa, and Cartagena Declaration applicable to the Latin American countries. Okay, so this is one aspect of, this is one important provisions of the 1951 convention. Why we discuss the definition, who are refugees. Okay, the second important provisions of the 1951 convention is, and is also there in both the African as well as Latin American convention, is the principle of non-refoulement. Okay, so the principle of non-refoulement is a very, very important provisions in the 1951 convention, because this principle is considered as a customary international law. Whether you are party to the if the state is party to the 1951 convention or not, but this provision is applicable to everyone. And during the CAA protest and CAA discussion in the parliament, this topic was widely discussed by the member of parliament. Okay, so what is the principle of refoulement? As per the Article 33 of the Refugee Convention, 1951 Convention on the Status of Refugees, it defined what is principle of non-refoulement. The principle of non-refoulement means if a person is coming, for example, if any, the Bangladeshi person is coming to India, India has an obligation at least to give temporary protection to that person. And if India send back, deport them back to their own country where there is a threat to his or her life, in, for example, in Bangladesh, then India is violating the principle of non-refoulement. So that means non-refoulement means you can't send back a person to his or her own country where there is a his or her threat, threat to his or her life. Okay, so that is principle of non-refoulement. So this principle of non-refoulement is also contained in Convention Against Torture, and is also contained in other the Geneva Convention, and also International Convention on the Civil and Political Rights. This provision is, you will find in not only in the 1951 Convention but also in the other uh, human rights document or instrument. Okay. So apart from that, what are the other rights these refugees have is, see, this 1950 convention also contains some of the rights which are available under the international human rights law. So international human rights law, we have Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we have International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, International Covenant on Economic and Social Rights, Convention Against Torture, elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. These are the human rights conventions, and the provisions of this human rights instrument also invoked in 1951 convention. For example, the right to life, liberty, and security of person is there in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is also applicable to the refugees. And apart from that, Article 14 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights talks about right to seek and enjoy asylum. Asylum means a temporary protection. If you're going another country to seek the refugee status, before any country grants you a refugee status, they have to provide you a temporary accommodation, temporary protection. So that is asylum. Okay. So apart from that, refugees are also have the right, freedom from torture, cruel or inhuman treatment, freedom from slavery, recognition as a person before law, and freedom from arbitrary arrest, freedom from arbitrary interference in privacy and home and family, freedom of opinion, freedom of expression of opinion, and right to be educated, right to participate in the cultural rights. These are the other rights you will find in the Refugee Convention as well as the other human rights instruments. Okay, so these are the international legal mechanism for the protection of refugees. So apart from this, so I just want to make another important observation here is that if you see now, in the south, in the global south, the developing country, majority of the developing countries are not party to the 1951 convention. So majority of the Western countries are party to the 1951 convention. Okay. So now the question arises whether these Western countries are serious about the protection of refugees. For example, we have seen in 2016 Syrian refugee crisis. In Syrian refugee crisis, we have seen how the people are stopped at the border of Europe. So many Alan Kurdi, photo we have seen how thousands of people have died at the border of Europe. So as per the 1951 convention, as per the the Article 33, the principle of non-refoulement, it is a clear violation. You cannot send back to a person where they are seeking the refuge or they are seeking asylum. So if you are sent back to their own country, it is a violation of the principle of non-refoulement. So these countries, the Western countries, they are party to this convention, but they are violating this principle of non-refoulement. Okay, so the reason why they are not serious about this 1951 convention is because the first reason is they adopted this convention. You know, when this convention was adopted, majority of the third world countries, the developing countries, were not part of the negotiation. The second is, so they just adopted to address the problem of refugees in the Europe in 1950. So after that, in 50s, 60s, 70s, when refugees started, you know, going from global south to global north, they they thought that this is a serious problem to their economic stability. So that's why they thought these refugees should be stopped at the border itself. They should not be allowed inside the Europe or North American countries. In order to do this, what they are doing now is they they started weakening the provisions of the 1951 convention in the form of what we called in the academics non-entry policies. They are adopting the non-entry policies. What is non-entry policies? Now they are introducing the visa, you know, career sanctions. You can't go to Europe without having a visa. If a refugee, if he says I want to go to Europe because there is a threat to my life in the in a world country, they will not allow, because you can go to Europe or North America only if you have a visa. So apart from that, there are range of other mechanisms they are adopting, like they are having a regional laws like Amsterdam Convention, Schengen laws, Dublin Convention. All these are convention adopted to stop these refugees from entering the border of the Europe. So apart from that, they are also adopting the safe countries, you know, the safe havens. That means they will create some space outside the Europe, outside the North America, and to stop this refugee, they will ask this refugee to go back, go to that particular place, or they will ask the other country to host this refugees. Okay, so apart from that, they are also now focusing on in-country protection. They are saying you have, you know, the country, the global southern country, developing country should have a mechanism so that these refugees should not leave their home country and they should not reach the Europe. So these are the provision is ultimately leads to the weakening of 1951 convention. Okay. So apart from that, we have the UNHCR institutional mechanism. We have the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. Exclusive. These institutions are exclusively adopted for providing protection assistance to refugees. Okay. So now I'll come to the India part. So what are the laws and institutions we have in India, and what are the judicial approach? What is the legal approach? And all these things we'll discuss in India part. So in India, so India has hosted one of the large number of refugees, starting from the partition. You know, the large number of refugees came to India, and we are also having large number of refugees who are coming from Tibet, Sri Lanka. Recently, the Rohingya refugees, Chakma refugees, and other different people are coming from Afghanistan and all. We have a large number of refugees in India. So, what are the legal framework we have? As you know, it is everybody knows that India is not party to the 1951 convention. So that means this 1951 convention is not applicable to us because we are not party to it. Okay. So the many so the why India is not, the question arises why India is not party to the 1951 convention. This was discussed across the academia as well as in the parliament. Why India is not party to the 1951 convention? Every time, most of the academician and member of parliament, they urge to have to become a party to the 1951 convention. But till now, the officially Minister of External Affairs has not given any clear reason why India is not party to the convention. But in some of the occasion, they have indirectly said why India is not party to the Refugee Convention. One of the main reasons why India is not party to the Refugee Convention is because the Refugee Convention is a Eurocentric, because it was adopted in 1951 just to address the problem of European refugee. They are not concerned about refugees from the developing countries, including India. So in 1950, when this drafting process was going on, India was the founding member of United Nations, and also, they actively participated in the drafting. But the Europeans who are mainly involved in this drafting process ignore the plight of refugees in the India, because during the partition 1947, India faced a large problem of refugees. Large number of people came to came to India. So this during this drafting process, they ignored the problem of Indian refugees. So that's the one reason why India is always reluctant to party to this 1951 convention. So apart from that, the another reason, main reason why India is not a party to the 1951 convention is because this refugee convention does not have a strong burden sharing provision. So burden sharing means every country has to share the burden of refugees. The global developed country, the global northern country should not send back this refugee to the developing country. Developing countries are always facing the financial problem, economic instability, but they are hosting a large number of refugees. So when developing country talked about burden sharing, the developed country always refuse to share the burden of refugees. They always talk about burden shifting, not the burden sharing. This is the second most important reason why India is not a party to 1951 convention. So since India is not a party to the 1951 convention, so what are the other mechanisms we have to address the problem of our refugees, the Indian refugees? So we have uh, the Foreigners Act in 1946. Before India got independence, the Foreigners Act was adopted by the Britishers. Okay, so this Foreigners Act was adopted to govern the entry, stay, and exit of foreigners in India that time. So this Foreigners Act is also applicable now. So the refugees, the Foreigners Act, the main one of the important legal framework we have to deal with the refugee situation. So Article 2 Clause A of the Foreigners Act talks about foreigner. Who is a foreigner? A person who is not a citizen of India is a foreigner. So according to this definition, all non-citizens will become refugees. And Section 3 of the Foreigners Act, gives a lot of power to the central government to issue order to control the foreigners in India. So that means our bureaucrats, the central government executive have large number of, they have a huge power to deport the person who is coming from other country to our country to seek refuge. If they are, they are considered as a refugee, so they are considered as a, foreigners, and this central executive or the central government has the power to expel them as per the Foreigners Act. Okay, so that means the Foreigners Act is only talks about deportation. It does not talk about any protection of refugees. So, in the absence of any legal, what are the other? What are the? Do we have any other measures or not? So, one of the important the law which deals with the problem of refugees, the Constitution of India, because the Article 14 and 21 of the Indian Constitution all not only guarantees the rights of citizens but also the guarantees the rights of non-citizens. So that's why the refugees are also entitled to get the protection under Article 14 and 21. Article 14 talks about equality, right to equality. Article 21 talks about right to life and personal liberty. Okay, so the Article 21, how it helps the foreigner, because they are, the one is the right against deprivation of life and dignity. So that is one important provision. The second is the executive, if they are deporting these foreigners to their own country, they can't do so without following the due process, without following the principle of natural justice. Okay, so these two important articles plays an important role in protection of refugees in India, Article 14 and 21. Okay, so apart from that, we have some other article also, Article 20. It talks about right against prosecution and prosecution under retrospective law, right against double jeopardy, right against self-incrimination, Article 22, Article 25 to 28, right to religion, and Article 32. Even foreigner also can approach the Supreme Court under Article 32. So these are the constitutional provision we have to provide protection to the refugee. Apart from that, India is also party to the range of international human rights treaties. For example, the UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, International Covenant on Economic and Social Cultural Rights, International Convention on Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination, Convention against torture. India is party to all these international human rights instruments. So hence, this provisions of this international human rights is also applicable to refugees in India. Okay. So apart from that, the customary international law. So what is customary international law? For example, we have discussed, I discussed the principle of non-refoulement. India is not party to the 1951 convention, but India has an obligation to respect the principle of non-refoulement because under the principle of customary international law, whether you are party or not, you have to respect the customary principles. Okay. So in this way, the refugees in India get the protection from Constitution and international human rights instrument. So apart from that, what is the judicial approach? So we know two famous cases. The one is Khudiram Chakma versus State of Arunachal Pradesh and National Human Rights Commission versus State of Arunachal Pradesh. Uh, Initially in 1950s, 60s, the Supreme Court has took the position that they will not interfere in the power of the executive. If the executive is sending back these foreigners to their own country, the Supreme Court used to maintain that they will not interfere. But in Khudiram Chakma was the state of Arunachal Pradesh and National Human Rights Commission was the state of Arunachal Pradesh. This is the problem of Chakma refugees who settled in Arunachal Pradesh. The Supreme Court has interpreted the constitutional provision and invoked the Article 14 of the Constitution, Article 21 of the Constitution, and also the invoked Article 14 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And they said this executive, the bureaucrats cannot forcefully send back the Chakma refugees to Bangladesh. So they had to follow the due process. They have to respect the due process and Article 21. They can't simply deport them back because state have an obligation under Article 14 and 21 to provide protection to refugees, right to life and personal liberty. You cannot take back their, you cannot put in an undignified situation. Okay. So apart from that, the Supreme Court also recognized principle of non-refoulement as one of the important principles which is applicable to India in Abbas Habib versus Union of India. In this case, the Supreme Court has invoked or recognized the principle of non-refoulement. That means you can't send back a person who seek refugee to back to their own countries. Okay. So in recently, this Rohingya refugees coming from Myanmar, the Supreme Court has given two different decisions. In Muhammad Salimullah versus Union of India, the Supreme Court's order for deportation of Rohingya Muslim to the Myanmar. But in another case, Abdul Sukar versus State of West Bengal. In this case, the Supreme Court ordered the prevention of deportation of the Rohingya refugees. Okay, so that means the Supreme Court has taken a very different, different position when it comes to the different kinds of refugees. In Chakma refugees, they actively supported the Chakma refugees, but in Myanmar, the Rohingya refugees, they have taken a different approach. Okay. So apart from this, apart from the judicial and legal there are recent initiatives that have taken place in the India and the Asian level. So what are the initiative has taken to provide protection to refugees India and South Asian region? Because not only India, even the entire South Asian countries are not party to the 1951 convention. Okay, so but we have large number of refugees. So in order to address this problem, in 1997 in Dhaka, the eminent person group under the chairmanship of Justice P.N. Bhagwati, they drafted what we call the Model National Refugee Law. So they drafted Model National Refugee Law for the not only for the India but for the entire South Asian region. But unfortunately, none of the South Asian countries has taken this Model National Refugee Law seriously. The reason why they are not having this domestic legislation is because of their they are not able to share the burden of refugee because of their economic instability. They are economically weak, but also some other problem. The majority they are economically very weak, so they are not in a position to host large number of refugees. So that's why they don't have any regional convention or domestic legislation on refugees. And if they want to adopt national legislation, the modern national refugee law will be a great source for that. So apart from that, so at the international level, on 17th December 2018, the United Nations General Assembly affirmed the Global Compact on Refugees. So this was adopted in 2018. This Global Compact on Refugees is not a convention; it is only a declaration. It is only a soft law instrument. That means non-binding instrument. So this Global Compact on Refugee talks about burden sharing, and and the international cooperation of all the countries, because the no large number of countries are not party to the 1951 convention. That's why the new initiative has taken in the form of non-binding law to get the support from the all the countries, and India is also participated in the drafting of Global Compact on Refugees. Okay, so this is the recent one. I'm just want to know I just want to bring this here. So, these are the recent one, and India is, as far as the India is concerned, the Global Compact on Refugee will not have a larger impact because India has maintained a very strong position. They will not party to the 1951 convention. Also, they don't get much benefit from the Global Compact on Refugee because another country, developed countries, still they don't want to share the burden of refugees. Okay, so that's why India is also rejecting the Global Compact on Refugees. So these are the some of the recent initiatives. So I would like to conclude finally. So in India, we don't have a domestic legislation, but we have large number of refugees. India has one of the large number of refugees. We are very successful in hosting large number of refugees, but we are not party to the 1951 convention. But in my view, we should have a national legislation on refugees because our executive and judicial approach to refugees is very uncertain. So that's why having a national legislation on refugee certainly help in providing protection assistance to refugees in India. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that wonderful session. Now we'll move on to the interactive session. So if anyone has any question, you can just raise your hand, unmute yourself and ask the question.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
My question is relating to, since we are in Assam, it is related to the Assam situation. 25th March 1971 is what is the cutoff date.
Sir,
And
sorry for interference. Today my lecture only focus on the international and Indian legal framework, because
No, my question, you just listen to it. I am asking a very specific question. I am not
yeah,
asking in respect of the Assam Accord.
yeah.
71, 25th March 71 is the cutoff date.
Hmm.
Now, 86 is the Assam Accord.
Okay.
Today we are in 2020. That thing is still not implemented. Now, in this span of, if a cutoff year is 71 and there 50 years have already passed, my question to you is, as per the norms of the refugees, how will, there must have been second generation, third generation people who have already been born in Assam. What will happen to their status when the status of the earlier refugees are decided?
So earlier their refugee status is determined.
What happens to the next generations? Those
No,
who have been
it's,
born here.
so your question is, no, actually what I'm saying is, I will deal Assam issues separately. I will not discuss this in today's lecture. We can have a separate session on Assam CA, Accord, Assam Accord, Citizen Amendment Bill, what happened to their children, how this international applicable to them. Okay, so because that is entirely different. So I will not talk about Assam Accord CA in this lecture. If you have any global refugee problem, any other question, I will happy to address.
Thank you.
Okay, I suppose Principal Sir is trying to, sir, you are on mute, sir. Principal Sir? Sir, you are on mute. Sir, you can unmute. Yes, sir.
Yes. Is
Yes,
it
sir.
audible now?
Yes,
Is it
you're
audible?
audible now. Yes, sir, you're audible.
Thank you, Dr. Balaji.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful speech, very thought-provoking and informative. Thank you very much. I have a few questions. Right now, what I've been asked to you that about the foreigners, so-called foreigners problem in Assam. But I think it is not concerned with our topic, today's topic, as because
today I haven't spoken anything about Assam problem.
no,
Yeah.
they are not recognized. They are not recognized, neither recognized as refugee nor recognized as displaced person.
So that means they are
or
stateless
stateless.
people.
Yeah, stateless people.
Okay.
So thing is that the refugee problem. So far I know, I have very little knowledge about it. So far I know, prior to the Second World War, the refugee problem has been existed, especially at that time, the refugee from America and as well as from Russia, if I'm not wrong. And then later on, as you have mentioned, rightly mentioned about the refugee of the Sri Lanka, Chakma refugee, Chakma initially they were treated as a displaced person, and from Rohingya persons.
Yes.
Then I don't know about Syria, what is going on in Syria and Afghanistan. But question is, so far India is concerned, we have Article 14, we have Article 21, we have Article 19, and all the provision of the fundamental rights are provided for the persons, not only for the citizens. It has been provided for the person. In that way, the refugees are getting privileges, all kind of privileges in India.
Correct.
But I don't know, according to your convention, as you have said, there are so many numerous conventions concerning with the refugees, international refugees. Is a great problem of the UN. So far, I know that once I met the Director General of Refugee Commission at Kolkata, NUJS. At that time, Professor Madhav Menon was my idol. Madhav Menon was the Vice Chancellor of NUJS at that time. I met one Director General of Refugee Commission of UNO. And that time I had a discussion with him. And now my one technical question I have, that what law is applied. In India, there is no problem, I think. In India, as because we have the fundamental rights, all the fundamental rights are provided for the persons. Apart from the refugee law, we have, as being the member country of the convention, all this convention, we naturally we definitely will follow it. But in other countries, what law is being applied in terms of the refugees, and how the refugees and the displaced persons, how they are classified?
Yeah.
Number one, this is a technical point for me. I don't know about it. What law is applied for them? What privileges and what rights they are getting apart from their shelter, food, and other things. And another thing is, another my question is that due to the your COVID-19, the subsequent effect of lockdown. Do you think that the laws in India, the labor laws are affected, the environmental law is being affected, human rights law is being affected, and so it has encroached, it has affected in many areas of our law. But do you think in international law, in terms of the international law, that due to COVID-19, everything as because we are adopting new norms, as because we are going to adopt new things, going to change everything. So do you think that there will be some major effect in the international law in future after the effect of this COVID-19? And third question is, how it is since we have one human rights law, we your human rights, we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the follow-up action was carried out by the Vienna Convention, the program of action. In one kind, human rights, and another the refugee law. But it's my humble question, in spite of this human rights law, that how this refugee law, what is the difference between the human rights law and refugee law? How it is acted? This is my query, please. Hello.
So I suppose Dr. Balaji's connection has been interrupted.
Oh. Just try to connect him.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there was some network problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sir, you have asked me 4 questions. The first one is, what happens to the other country who are not party to the 1951 convention, though don't have any refugee law? That is the first question. The second question is, what is the difference between refugees and internally displaced persons? The third question is, what is the how the COVID impacted the life of refugees? The fourth question, my internet was not helping. What was your fourth question, sir? What was your last question? I didn't hear that.
Last question was that we have already human rights law, we have Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we have the follow-up action, Vienna Convention is there. So whole human community is being covered by Universal Declaration of Human Rights law and its subsequent convention. And what is the difference between the human rights law and refugee law? Of course, there are some practical aspects in refugee law, but what is the basic difference? As because we have to protect the human rights of the refugee, whether he or she is a refugee or whether she is by your the displaced person or whatever. So what is the basic difference in between the human rights law and the refugee?
So the first question, the other countries, as you asked me. The first of all, certain principle of international law is applicable to all the countries, whether they are party to any particular convention or not. For example, principle of non-refoulement. Irrespective of whether any country is party to the 1951 convention or party to any international human rights instrument, is applicable to them. It is a customary principle of international law. So in that way, no country can deport the foreigners back to their own country where there is a threat to their life or liberty. Okay. So in that way, the other countries also has to respect the principle of 1951 convention. So apart from that, like we have in India, the Indian Constitution, so it also leads to the human right instrument and other domestic legislation of that particular country. So that is first. The second, you asked me what is the difference between refugees and internally displaced people. The refugees, the basic fundamental difference between refugees and IDP, internally displaced persons, are refugees cross the border and internally displaced person settled within the border of their own countries. Okay, so likewise, the causes are almost slightly different. In refugee, we have well-founded fear of persecution because of member of any particular race, religion, nationality. But when it comes to the internally displaced people, there are 4-5 categories of the reason why people get displaced. The number one is the conflict situation. The second is development induced displacement. If there is any project is going on and the people have to leave that place, then they will also become displaced. So apart from that, we have natural disaster. So because of this disaster, people have to leave their home and they settle within the country. They are disaster induced displacement. So apart from that, the other human right violation. So because of other human right violation, also people get displaced. But the refugee has very different definition. There should be a well-founded fear of persecution. So this is the basic difference. The refugee cross the border and seek the protection of other countries. Internally displaced person, they will not cross the border, they will seek the protection of their own countries. Okay. So the third is COVID situation. I already said the COVID has this pandemic. The refugees are facing lots of problem because they are staying in camp. They won't be able to maintain social distance. They don't have a document to get free ration, subsidized ration, and the health facilities. And even if the government adopt any social security measure, they won't be able to get because they lack the document which are required to get this facility. So in this situation, in India, the court has to come to their rescue, or the government will is the political will is very, very important, because every country is struggling to, protect their people, and the refugees are the most affected, and the international community come together. Even the state has to respect the international human rights instrument. They have to respect the domestic human rights instrument, and with this only the refugee right can be protected effectively. And when if any state is introducing any social security measure, if they are providing any ration to the poor people, they should not impose the restriction to have a proper document. They should provide food to everyone. They should treat refugee, citizen, non-citizen, refugee, everyone, to get the medical facility, health facility, and all those things. State should, the political will is very important. State should not have a very strict documentation procedure to provide facility or to provide protection to the refugees. Okay. So I hope I answered your question, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so we have a question in the chat box from Anukriti Joshi.
Yeah.
Why is the distinction between refugee status and subsidiary protection significant?
Refugee status and subsidiary protection. See, the refugee status is very, very important. When a person seeks the refugee status, so refugee status, if I get the refugee status, the state government, whatever they have protection mechanism for refugee, they will provide. If the refugee don't get, if the refugee don't get the refugee status, they will be considered as asylum seeker. So the asylum seeker means they will get the temporary protection. Before they get the refugee status, they will get the temporary status. As I already mentioned, Article 14 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights talks about right to seek asylum. This is also a principle of customary international law. If a state can refuse to recognize a person as a refugee, but they cannot refuse to grant a temporary protection or right to asylum.
Okay. So we have another question in the chat box. This is from Manish Das. The question is, how can we minimize the refugee problem that is present in India?
how to minimize the problem? The government has to have a strong will. They should not ask so many documents from the refugees, because as we know, the refugee, when they leave their home, they will lose everything. If they can have proper document and everything, they will not go to another country. They will leave their home in a very, very serious situation. So if the government asks provide this document, that document, the refugees will find very, very difficult to provide the document. On the humanitarian basis, the government has to treat them well. They have to provide all kinds of protection assistance to these people, because they are the highly, highly vulnerable people.
Okay, thank you, sir. Our next question is from Jyotismita Das. The question is, are the persons who are fleeing war or war-related conditions, such as famine and ethnic violence, be considered as refugees?
Yes, yes. Ethnic violence is also one of the criteria to recognize person as refugees.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, next question is from Kumari Neetu. What is the reason for the differential approach of Indian government and Indian judiciary with respect to Chakma refugees and Rohingya refugees?
See, ultimately, the government will decide this. The Indian government has a different approach to Chakma refugees as well as the Rohingya refugees. So, in Chakma refugees, even Supreme Court has taken very active role in protecting the rights of Chakma refugees. But when it comes to Myanmar, the government has taken very strong view. They are deporting Rohingya refugee back to the Myanmar. In my view, this is a violation of the principle of non-refoulement. Ultimately, the government has to show strong will to accommodate the interest of Rohingya refugees.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Upasana Goswami. She asks, is India really violating the principle of non-refoulement, as India has been criticized on this regarding deportation of the Rohingyas?
Yes, of course. Deportation of Rohingya is a clear violation of principle of non-refoulement, because principle of non-refoulement clearly says you cannot deport them back to where there is a threat to his or her life. If they are not able to grant them a refugee status, at least the government should provide a temporary protection. So before they should not deport them back, they should at least provide a temporary protection if they are not able to determine whether refugee or not.
Okay, so we have a question from Payal Agarwal. She asks, as you just said, that government should reduce the amount of documentation required, but will this not leave our country vulnerable to terror elements?
See, the government always claim the refugee is always threat to internal security. Okay. See, we have to understand the problem of refugees. Who are refugees? Refugees are coming from other countries because of very, very serious problem. Because nobody wants to live home. They are leaving their home. They are seeking the protection of other country, not their own country. They are seeking the protection of other country, and if we say there is a threat to their life, so it is not very difficult to determine whether people are coming to harm the security of our country, or whether really seeking the humanitarian protection from us. So it is the political will ultimately has to show, the strong political will is important to treat the refugee humanity with humanitarian intention.
Thank you, sir. Sir, a question from Kasturi Chakravarti. Why, after years of illegal immigration, India is still not able to find a permanent solution to this problem?
So the illegal migrants are the migrants coming to India without any proper documentation. So the person coming without documentation, they are considered as illegal migrants, because our border is very weak. We don't have proper fencing on our border. So the migrant will come from different countries for economic reason, the Bangladesh and many other countries. They are poor countries. They will come our country for economic reason, also for better life expectation. So we have the problem of illegal migrants, and we have to have a strong border the protection forces, and we should have strong uh, law also deal how to deal with illegal migrants. We don't have any law to deal with illegal migrants. I think our legislature decide should enact domestic legislation to deal with illegal migrants. In the absence of this legislation, we continue to face problem of illegal migrants.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the next question is from Deborshi Bora. Here, so in this question, the 1951 refugee definition has been quoted, and the question asked is a person who fears persecution because of sexual orientation eligible for refugee status?
Yes, yes, right.
Good
If a
question.
person is if a person is facing sexual harassment because of they had to because of sexual harassment because of a person is belong to any race, religion, nationality, holding any opinion of political uh, any political opinion or member of any social group. Because of this, if any women face the sexual harassment from other group, then she will definitely qualify as refugee. She will entitled to get the refugee status.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the next question is from Joy Aditya Fukon. How can the government solve the issue of internally displaced person like Bru refugees and Kashmiri Pandits?
Correct. The good question. Internally displaced person we have because various kinds of internal displacement. We have conflict displacement, development induced displacement. We have the climate change displacement. There are range of variety of displacement we have, but unfortunately, Indian government does not have any law or policy to deal this displacement. Okay, even the migrant laborers who are walking thousands of kilometers, they will also be considered as because they are displaced. They are leaving their home and they are in search of another home. They are also displaced because human right violation. Here, if they stay in their home, they won't be able to have they won't be able to pay their rent to the home lords and all those things. This is comes under the human right violations. Okay, so India should have even Kashmiri Pandits. They are also internally displaced, and we have range of category of displacement. So in order to address this problem, Indian government should have a legislation because without legislation, it is difficult to guarantee the rights of internally displaced people.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Apismita Boiragi. She asks, the COVID-19 pandemic is becoming disastrous for the refugees and internally displaced persons. How is the Indian government dealing with it or trying to tackle the problem of asylum seekers and refugees during the pandemic period?
And please repeat the question.
Sir, during the COVID-19 pandemic, it is becoming disastrous for the refugees and internally displaced persons. How is the Indian government dealing with it or trying to tackle the problem of asylum seekers and refugees during this period?
Yeah, I already said the pandemic has made the refugees and displaced people life worse because we always say in this pandemic we have to maintain social distance. The refugees, majority of the refugees are staying in refugee camps. So how can we expect they should have social distance because these are congested refugee camps, and also these camps does not have any proper water, does not have any medical facility. So definitely.
Hello.
Sir, I think he's again having a network issue.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible to me.
Sir, I suppose he is having a network issue again.
Uh, uh.
Maybe we'll get him back, sir.
Sorry, there was an internet problem. So, so this pandemic, refugees are facing the worst. They are very vulnerable. So when government introduce social security measures, when they provide free ration to the poor people, and they should provide to refugees as well. And they should not ask any document from these people, and they should, because the refugee does not have any their home and they lack the document. So when they provide any social security benefit, when they provide any assistance to people, poor people, the same should go to the refugees as well. Otherwise, it's very difficult for them to survive.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the next question is from Bikash Das. He asks, what is the vetting process for refugees coming to India?
What is the
So vetting process.
what is vetting process? I'm able to understand.
So I have no idea, sir. The
So
question
how
is
do you
like,
how do you permit a refugee entry into your country? Vetting
okay,
process is like vetting. Now he doesn't have any document, so there is no question of any vetting, actually.
Okay. So we have the UNHCR, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee, who determines who are refugees. Okay. So this United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, we have a branch in India, and they are in touch with the Ministry of External Affairs. So they will ask the person from, they will ask particular document from the people, and they have to provide. So before any person getting the refugee status, they will be considered as asylum seeker, and the government has to provide temporary protection. And they, before a government granting the refugee status, they will be under the category of asylum. Okay, so it has to go through the the status determination through the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee branch in India. It is there in Delhi.
okay. Thank you, sir. If anyone else has any other question?
So Dr. Balaji, may I share one
Yes,
thing
sir.
with you?
Yes, sir,
Hello.
please.
Yes.
Yes,
See, what you have already discussed about the migrant worker in India during this pandemic period. The executive was so far. I think that the executive has now two functions. One is to maintain the law and order. Another is to follow the law of the land. That means that mm, they have to they cannot violate the human rights of the migrant worker. And on the other hand, they have to follow the law and order also. Two things are there. And right now, this is not the position to possible for the parliament to sit and to make some amendment or to make some new laws in favor of the migrant workers, as because already the labor law has already been affected, and now we are totally banking upon the judiciary, and as so far we know that if your PIL has been filed before the Supreme Court of India, and initially the Supreme Court of India not willing to entertain the case, but later on it has been realized by the Supreme Court of India that the human rights of the migrant workers has been violated in terms of the Article 14 and especially in terms of the Article 21, life and livelihoods, and the right to education also. So I think that now it's a very critical time. That is why I'm asking you that in international aspect, is there any possibility to change the law, as because the whole economy is going to be changed. When economy is going to be changed, then it is always followed by the law. So is there any possibility to change the international law, to review some things by the international law? Do you think that any possibility is there?
So, so at the international level, so as we know, how international law works. So the basically international law is created to help the developed countries. Okay. So international, if you see the from the colonization, so international law support the colonization. They will say white man burden. So what I'm trying to say is, it is the problem of every country. So every country has to deal with. Now, international law, yes, we can say we have human right commissions, we have human right treaty bodies at the international level. We are party to the so many international human rights instruments, and we have human right treaty. If there is any violation of human rights, definitely the Minister of External Affairs every year will report to these human right treaties. Okay. So in this situation, the only the Western country, developing countries come forward and they should help the poor countries. So because our international law is always, it is the cooperation of all the countries. Because without the cooperation of Western countries, the developing countries will not able to do anything. It is always, international law is always plays the politics. Politics is very important in the law. So in my view, the countries should come together, both developed and developing countries. They should share their economic problem. The developed country, there should be a special and differential treatment when it comes to international law, right? So the countries should come together and they should help poor countries in this pandemic. And also the migrant laborers, we have amended labor laws and we are amended so many laws. It is it is very important that the government should take care of this laborers, because the lockdown which we impose is very harsh lockdown when you compare to the all over the world. India has faced a very harsh lockdown, and because of this, poorer people are suffering. What ultimately I'm saying is that it is the international community will, as well as the Indian political will, is very very important to address the problem in this pandemic.
Okay, another point I want to share with you. In Assam, you will find in some jails that some deporters, so-called foreigners, so-called Bangladeshis, and also some Chakma people and Rohingya people, they are kept in jail, in different jail in Assam. This is the ground reality. So
Okay.
actually, neither as I had said, that neither they are refugee nor they are displaced person or they are stateless. But they have the fundamental rights, they have the human rights. But I think their human rights is being violated. Yes, because they are kept in the jail, and they are governing by the manual of the jails. They are treated as jail. They are treated as jail detainee. So just I am sharing with you. It's a gross violation of human rights. So I
Yes,
think that
sir.
in international platform, it should be raised that those people, those who are, it is said here as a devoter, those who are coming from Bangladesh, whether they are citizen or not citizen, yet to be decided. And those who are coming from some Chakma peoples are the Rohingya peoples are I have met personally in Tezpur jail also. So they are, I think, when they are keeping in the jail, and they are maintaining with the uh, jail manuals, as because they are not prisoner. They should not be treated as prisoner, and it is so pathetic that the people are the male people, the female people. They are separated there. So so it is a gross violation of human rights. I think just I am sharing with you, and if you have any opportunity in international platform, it should be raised. I think. Thank you
Yes,
very
sir.
much for
See,
your wonderful speech.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I suppose we don't have any other question. Sir, here, if I may, I would like to ask your views, sir, on Trump's recent decision on the refugee and migrant issue. And, sir, the recently placed bill by Kuwait, the expat bill, which has been placed maybe 3 to 4 days back. So where Kuwait has, drafted a bill saying that they will send back maximum of the people who, as foreigners, are staying there and they're employed there. So if the bill is passed, so 70% of the Indians from Kuwait will be returning back during this pandemic situation without any job. So how far do you think is in conformity with international law and the Refugee Convention or the Migrant Convention as regarding foreigners?
Okay. So first question is Trump. Trump refugee policy.
Yes.
It is a gross violation of principle of non-refoulement. I already said these Western countries, the Northern American and European countries, they always claim they are the champion of human rights. They are the champion of human rights, and because of them only we have all human rights, including 1951 Convention on Refugees. Okay. So in 1951 Convention on Refugee, it is very, very clearly mentioned principle of non-refoulement. Okay, Article 33. So the Trump, when he assumed the office of president, the first document he signed was send back refugee to the Syria, to Middle East countries. Okay, this is a gross violation of human rights. This is a gross violation of 1951 Refugee Convention. But at the end, at the end of the day, we have to understand the international law is all about politics, because this same international law also says, also support claim by the Western countries there is a white man burden. They support, they legally justified their colonization in India and other developing countries, Asian and African countries. So that's why we can't trust these people. That's why we are not signed 1951 convention. Yes. So in Cuba, so Indians are staying in Cuba. So
Sir,
they are
Kuwait,
not.
sir.
Sorry,
The
Kuwait.
bill, yes,
So
sir,
they are
Kuwait.
not refugees, right?
No,
They are
sir,
not
foreigners.
refugees. They are foreigners. So they are foreigners, and they have agreement with the domestic law in Kuwait. Okay, so when they are working there, they had to follow the labor laws and labor regulation. Okay, so what we are discussing today is completely different from that situation. They are economic migrants. They are not refugees.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, I suppose we can wind up the interactive session for now because we don't have any other questions right now. So,
Thank you, Dr. Balaji. Now onwards, you please treat yourself as a member of our family, NEF family.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for this great, wonderful opportunity. Thank
We'll
you
be in
all.
touch. We'll be in
Take-
touch in future.
Sure. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
thank you, sir. Sir, now I'd request Dr. Pankaj Chaudhary to give the vote of thanks. Pankaj, sir.
If he is not available, Regina,
Yes,
you can carry on.
Yes, sir. I suppose maybe he is having some connectivity issue. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this interactive and informative lecture. Thank you so